Creators of works actually have copyright interest as soon as that work is created and reduced to a tangible form, either notated or recorded on a CD, on an MP3, or on a tape. But the best way to protect your work is to file a copyright registration. Once again, if you're in a country outside of the United States, you need to check with your country's copyright laws to determine the best way to protect your works. Here in the United States, you can protect your works by filing a copyright registration with the U.S. Copyright Office. When you file your copyright with the U.S. Copyright Office, you acquire greater remedies should someone infringe on your copyright. What are those remedies? Well, first, you have the right to collect statutory damages. In other words, in the judge's discretion, they can find the other party liable for damages of $750 up to $30,000 per infringement. You only have that if you have a U.S. copyright registration. You also have the right to go to federal court. Federal court here in the United States means that you can sue anyone in any other state, but you can only do that if you file in federal court. You can also sue for loss of profits if you find that the infringement caused your business to lose an extensive amount of money. If you have a copyright registration and you sue someone for infringement and win the case, the judge has the discretion to order the losing party to pay the winning party's attorney's fees, and that can be a very substantial amount. So that's a great remedy to have, which you only have if you have a U.S. copyright registration. You also have the right to customs and federal marshal seizures. In other words, if you know someone is infringing on your copyrights, for instance, if they're shipping in from out of the country recordings that are infringing on your copyrights, you can go to court and have the customs office seize those goods as they cross the border. So how do you register your copyrights with the U.S. Copyright Office? Very important question. Well, there's really three steps that you have to follow. First, you have to file an application for registration of the copyright, either the SR or the PA type of copyright. You can do that a couple of different ways. One of the ways that the U.S. Copyright Office is really encouraging people to pursue is the electronic filing of copyrights. You can do that by going to ECO. ECO stands for Electronic Copyright Office. And once you get to that site and once you get to that link, you will be able to fill out a copyright registration form for either the performing arts registration for the composition or the sound recording copyright. And as a matter of fact, you can register both the sound recording copyright and a copyright for the underlying composition, the performing arts copyrights, but only if you own the rights to both the sound recording and the compositions that you're registering. So you can either file online or you can actually print out the forms and mail them in. If you print out the forms, you're going to have a separate PA form and a separate sound recording copyright form. But if you're on the ECO site, you're going to be able to register for both if you need to. The second step in the registration process is to pay the fee. There is a fee for each copyright registration for a work that you file. And here's where the Copyright Office is really trying to encourage people to use the ECO, the Electronic Copyright Office, because to file a work on the Electronic Copyright Office site, it only costs you $35. If you send in a mail-in form for the sound recording or the PA form, it costs $65. And the difference in the price, I'm sure, is just a way for the Copyright Office to encourage people to file online. And the last requirement is to deposit the work. You have to deposit the work with the Copyright Office. You can do that either by sending an electronic copy, an MP3, or you can send the actual physical copies to the Copyright Office. One question I hear often is, can you file more than one song or more than one sound recording on one copyright registration? Very important question. It can be very expensive. If you're filing one song for each registration at $35 or $65 each, it can become very, very expensive. Well, yes, you can. You can file more than one song or sound recording on one copyright registration. You can file a collection of works, but that is going to be registered under the title of the work. You know, I had a client a few years ago who was from my hometown of Cleveland, Ohio, and he had written a collection of songs, a number of songs with a young artist who went on to become a top-selling artist. And the artist recorded one of his songs and the album went platinum, I believe. And of course, the songwriter came to me and he said, yeah, John, I know I copyrighted this song and this artist is infringing on my work. I said, fine, find the copyright registration and we'll be able to go to court. Well, it took him too long of a period. He didn't come to me until after finding out about this song, maybe a year or so, and there is a 3-year statute of limitations for filing a copyright infringement action from the time that you first learn about the infringement. So it was very close to the last day of the statute of limitations. Statute of limitations basically means that after a certain period of time, you lose your rights to file for infringement of the action. So he had to really scramble to find the copyright registration, and he couldn't find it. He said, I know I copyrighted those songs. I knew I copyrighted the songs. Anyway, unfortunately, he passed the statute of limitations. And then maybe 6 months later, he called me. He said, John, I finally found the registration that it was on, but I didn't file it on an individual copyright registration form. I filed it under a collective work. And he said his name and the artist's name. And the title of the collection of works was My Client, the Artist, Songs 1997. That was the title of the registration. There were maybe 14 songs listed on the continuation pages of that. And he had done that multiple times with multiple songs. And so he had really lost track of which songs were registered under which title and collective works. So I clearly see the benefit of artists and even record companies and songwriters that own sound recordings filing copyright registrations under collections. But if you do that, you have to keep very, very good records of which songs and which sound recordings are being filed under which title so that you can easily locate it should someone infringe on your copyright.